After a historic meeting with South Korea, North Korea has announced that they will be closing their nuclear test sites in May. According to the South Korean president's office, North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, declared, "I am not a person who will fire a nuclear weapon to the South or the U.S. or target the U.S." Now, apparently the Punggye-ri site's closure will be done in public. And Kim Jong-un had agreed to invite experts of South Korea and the U.S. to disclose the process to the international community with transparency. Now, according to a spokesperson for South Korean President Moon, Kim also said, "If we meet often with the U.S., build trust, end the war, and eventually are promised no invasion, why would we live with the nuclear weapons?" Now, there is some suspicion that these sites have actually already been toppled from a recent earthquake. Now, according to the Associated Press, Chinese scientists have presented evidence that 4 earthquakes following North Korea's September 3rd, 2017 detonation of an estimated 100-kiloton nuclear weapon caused parts of the mountain to cave in, and it is possible that radioactive material could leak from the resulting cracks. Now, Punggye-ri was reported to have experienced tunnel collapses, which may have killed hundreds of workers around the same time. So even if the mountain has not collapsed, it is possible the tests left the site partially destroyed. Now, Kim has refuted these claims and says that these sites are totally in great condition, but he says what he really wants here is a truce with the United States. I mean, it makes sense, right? I mean, the United States and North Korea are technically still at war. The Korean War has never ended. And while South Korea and North Korea are trying to reach a peace treaty to end the war between themselves, the U.S. Still has 40,000 troops on the 38th parallel and is really involved with South Korea's military. And so they need sort of the U.S.'s approval and blessing to continue on with these peace treaties.
And a back and forth that has really been all about saber rattling. There's been nothing but war talk from both our president and their North Korean leader. It is at least, even if what Hannah's saying is true, that is to say that there was earthquake damage and it's widely suggested that maybe these plants aren't really viable anyway. But even if that's true, the discourse for the first time seems to be sort of a peaceful one. It's about getting to peace. So I really am paying the most attention to that. And even the effort to open up the process, to say, come in, you can inspect it, we're going to disarm. All the talk all of a sudden from the North Koreans is associated with disarmament and peace. That really shouldn't be lost in this process.
No, I think that's a really great point.
But it's still also a lot of talk. A lot of people who are still like, we don't believe this. It's more of just like after Friday, we got this document that they both signed where they agreed that they have common goals. And now we're hearing, hey, now I'm gonna do this, and even more so, I'm gonna do it in public. But still no date or time or anything, just
well, they said in May.
I thought that was the meeting.
No, they said they're gonna shut down their nuclear tests in May.
But to your point, to your point, it's a process. I agree. There are not a lot of specifics, and that's the way things get derailed. Well, it's not happening quickly enough. It's not happening earnestly enough. But it is a process, So I do think that you have to keep your eye on that process. And there are a lot of things, I know, Hannah, you're going to continue to point out a couple of the other things that are being said out of South Korea that I think are associated with trying to move that process along and suck in our president in a peace process as opposed to my button's bigger than your button kind of thing.
I think that, that is the real impetus for change here, right? The election of President Moon, who is more left-leaning. If you think about the fact that the past 2 presidents in South Korea are in jail now for corruption. They were more right-leaning. They didn't want the peace. It was more of like, my button's bigger than your button, that sort of mentality, and keeping up sort of the animosity from the Korean War. And now having a President Moon who wants the peace, who wants to broker that relationship and put an end to the Korean War. That's a big, shift in the tide.
Let me hasten to add one last thing, though, before we move on, and that is, please don't light me up on Twitter about being soft on North Korea. North Korea is a horrible authoritarian regime. They killed an American, as you know. They essentially boxed him up and sent him back over here to die. Their people are horribly mistreated, but that like understates it in the extreme. So we're well aware of how awful North Korea
Yes, of
is.
course.
I'm just talking about the peace process and moving it along in a direction of peace for the first time in a long time.
Unfortunately, to be able to help in a country full of abused people, this is the gatekeeper.
Right.
This is the person that you have to talk to.
Yeah, they do have to negotiate that. And a lot of people who are, like you mentioned, a lot of people are talking about their skepticism. A lot of the people who are the most skeptic are the people who are in charge of sort of brokering some of the peace here. If you think about John Bolton, who is, our national security advisor, who is saying, who knows what will happen here? There's still a lot of work to be done. And he was the one who screwed it up in the 90s when we were closer to a peace treaty with North Korea during the Clinton administration. So having him part of this deal doesn't make me feel super confident in the way things are moving. But
no, I agree. I completely agree. Bolton's not a great path on the road to peace. So that's having him in part of the process does not move things along.
No, he's a crazy person. Yeah. The UN
he's a crazy person
who has too much power.
Who seems to want war.
Does it say anything though? Is it worth hearing him say like, we're hopeful, but they could still turn all of this around?
No, I mean, he is the one who completely screwed it up in the 90s. He has been known to be to fly off the handle at a moment's notice. I mean, the only reason he worked for the UN is because he got, assigned to it during a recess. Because I think it was the House didn't want him.
He was unconfirmable.
Yeah, he was unconfirmable. Right. I mean, so I don't feel super confident having him in charge of that, but I do feel hopeful watching, Kim Jong-un and President Moon having these sorts of discussions, and hopefully it'll move in the right direction.
Yeah, you hope that the forces around Bolton are so significant, that current is going to be so strong that he can't really swim upstream against it. Right. That's the hope, and you hope that current just carries you right through the peace process.
2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below. Then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.